Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, for having invited me for this particular lecture. As she has already said, I'm working in Punjab Engineering College. I work in the area of environmental engineering, precisely water wastewater engineering systems. So today's talk is largely on sustainable water resources management. As I decipher from the topic itself, it involves a discussion on water. It involves a small discussion on what actually is sustainable development and how do we integrate these two issues as a management issue in water resources management. Okay. So to start with, we go by the simple generalized definition. Sustainable development as it is defined is by and large a societal philosophy and not something to do with a larger engineering issue in the early stages of its definition. And it was philosophically defined as a mode of development which meets the requirements of the present without hampering the capacity of the environment or the nature in meeting the demands of the future. It was largely a present day definition with a futuristic perspective. And getting into a practical scenario was more than a difficult scenario at that point of time. Rather, it had several of the philosophical discussions on how do we merge between. So there were more philosophy than a practice-oriented definition of sustainable development in the early stages of late 20th century. This is what is schematically defined as. It involves a sociological issue. It has an environmental component. It has an economic component. And integrating these three, we have the Venn diagram, which gives a sustainable form of developmental pattern at the center of the Venn diagram, which is shown over there. This is what normally I bring in as an engineering definition of sustainability. If we put it into practice, an engineering activity is by and large defined as appropriation of natural resources. I think I'm clear in that definition. We don't do anything other than that. Let me be honest in that statement. Although we claim that we are creators of the world, this and that, but what all we do is nothing other than reappropriating the scarce natural resources into an optimal pattern whereby the management of these resources is optimized for the maximum human benefit, or I put it more precisely, an optimal human benefit. If that is appreciated as a practical definition of engineering, then it is easy to give a practical definition of the so-called sustainable development. It starts from the natural resources which we cleave from the nature, reappropriate them or use them as the basic input, which forms an engineering activity. And as a part of this activity, we do have a residue which is created or a waste which is created, which comes back to the nature. Okay, it cannot go anywhere other than the place from which it has originated. So it comes back to the nature, and the environment has to accommodate or assimilate this particular waste or the pollution which is created in. And if that is what is the entire cycle of an engineering activity, then the all definition of sustainable development with respect to supportive capacity and assimilative capacity and putting it together with being something called a carrying capacity is as simple as what we have said. So the capability of a natural environment in supporting an engineering activity or a developmental activity is what is called as its supportive capacity. And the capability of the natural environment in assimilating the waste or the residues created out of that particular developmental activity is what is its assimilative capacity. And putting these two capacities together, that defines the carrying capacity of or the sustainable development capability of that natural environment. Well, of course, we do make an understanding from there in analyzing that particular definition, that it brings in a certain amount of physical limitation to the developmental activities. And that's what exactly the philosophy has also been directed towards. They said it has to meet the requirements of the present without hampering the capability of the environment in meeting, or nature in meeting the demands of the future. All that is what is contained here. And in a particular developmental activity, if the resource base and the capacity of the assimilative capacity of the nature in managing that pollution which is created out of that is both are merged, then the developmental activity can be called as a sustainable development. I think I'm clear in that statement. All that is what is a practical engineering definition of the sustainable development, which we have so-called, which we have so far talked about. Fine. Getting into the next issue, we have defined what is sustainability. In this particular talk, by and large, we will be centering around water as that resource which we are trying to appropriate, and trying to bring in a balance of trying to bring in a conceptual frame of the sustainable development in that particular resource allocation activity which we do in engineering practice. Fine. Okay. Maybe some of you are teachers, it appears. Okay. One of the quizzical questions which I have been asking in my 30 years of academic pursuit. In my first course in environmental engineering, I normally ask my students a question. All of you are from civil engineering? Okay. Okay. I ask them a question. What is water? Can anybody give me an answer? What is water? You don't need to worry about. You can make an attempt, but let me be honest that so far I have not got an answer from my this quiz seeking in the last 30 years. Fine. If anyone of you can give me an answer, I would be very happy. Fine. It's a wonderful answer which exactly matches with the chemical formula of water. And if I ask somebody, what are you drinking? Will anyone of us give that answer? I'm drinking a combination of two atoms of hydrogen and two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen. We don't give that answer, and that is not actually water what we are talking about. And the most first consumable material, which is one of the major factors that the planet. Okay, fine, fine. This is one of the most appreciated scientific and philosophical basis of water, and I can share one of the most jovial answer which I have ever received. This was received from one of the school students in Delhi, where I was giving a small talk on natural resources. So I did ask this particular question: what is water? There was an absolute silence for about 5 minutes in the audi. Thereafter, one of the smart boys, he stood up, no gender bias, he was a boy, that is why I said. He stood up and said, water is that which comes out of the tap. And that was really an eye-opener for me, and he is absolutely right in his own perspective. He has seen water as something which comes out when he opens the tap, something which stops when he closes the tap. Nothing more, nothing less. And he stays in a, and I try to find out where from he has coined this answer. He stays in a huge flat in that Noida area. Fine. He stays somewhere in the 8th or 10th floor of that particular flat. In the early morning, when he wants, he opens the tap, it comes. When he does not want, he closes it. That's what is water. And I'm not afraid if any one of you also make this kind of a mental frame. Yes, it is that. We have not been taking care of it other than what it is. And that was one of the early approaches in water management, where people started saying conservation of water is one of the most important thing in water management. But I would say that an awareness of water, what it is what is the basic requirement. None of us know what it is. All of us understand it as H2O. And I used to have a slide which I have removed from here, because I was told that it is an ICT based. Otherwise, was it an interactive thing, I would have given a slide which spans from HIJK and normally ask people to read that. People read it as HIJK. And what is that? That's what I said. I go along with sir. That is H2O. That's all what it is. It's as absurd as what I have said, or as absurd as what it is projected to be. So we look at water in a different perspective, and that what I think is one of the basic requirements in water management, whether it is sustainable water management or engineering water management or anything of that kind. If I provide H2O, nobody will drink. I think I'm clear about that. No packaged water is H2O. It contains something more than that. Unless that contains that something more than H2O, we are not going to drink it. And all of us struggle out in our chemical laboratories that we will have to create H2O if I really want a pure H2O. There is nothing called a pure H2O available in nature. And in engineering practice, we don't deal with something called H2O. That's all what it is. The premise, we are looking at water as something which is different from our basic conventional approach or understanding of water, or conventional outlook of water. Am I clear? There? Then I can proceed. Fine. I go with sir. This is what has been there in Rigveda. It says it comes from the heaven. It nourishes wherever it touches. Philosophically, that is it. It is the elixir of life, and without which there is no life in nature. It's absolutely in position. This what was our philosophical frame, and we make a prayer out of that in Rigveda and say that this is also one of the vital components. Therefore, it is one of my no religious bias on that thing. Therefore, it is also one of my Panchbhutas or one of my gods, without which I cannot exist. Fine. On an extension of practical understanding, other Veda says, without water, no capability is a capability, so I don't exist. So you are the elixir of immortality in this world. That's all what it is, philosophically. So we look at what is water from a larger scientific frame with our present day understanding of the issue. With this premise, if I ask what is water, can anybody give me a different answer? I've given a clue over here. This is borrowed from USGS. It's one of the standard pictures of hydrologic cycle which is available for. Then what could be water? Fine. I've already given premise of what we are trying to discuss. Water is nothing other than a natural resource, which in many of our engineering practices, we consider it as one of the resources and try to appropriate. All my water supply designs or planning or implementation is centering around this particular natural resource, nothing else other than this. All my activities with respect to maybe rainwater harvesting or with respect to water conservation or wastewater management, it's all centering around this issue. So I define water as a natural resource which as engineers we try to appropriate, we try to allocate maybe with a particular mechanism which we are doing. So if we appreciate water as one of the natural resources which in engineering practice we allocate, then the entire activity is done with. This is water. Water is a natural resource. And what is projected over here is a mechanism in nature which controls the movement of water. I think that is appreciated. It's a mechanism which is existing in nature, which controls the movement of water in nature, is what it is. And all scientific and engineering activities which we do will be largely centering around this hydrological cycle. If at all I want to deal with the subject of water. And normally I have a small another quizzical question which is asked to avoid the monotony of the classroom discussions. Where does it start? Where does it start? What's the starting point of hydrological cycle? Fine. Any other answer? Evaporation, precipitation. Any other answer? Okay. Where does your cycle tire start? What's the starting point of your cycle tire? Cycle tire. I said cycle tire. So anything which we define as a cycle does not have a starting point. It continues as a continuum, and the material flow or the mass flow within this continuum is to follow the law of conservation of mass, and then it continues. So we don't define any starting point, whether it is evaporation or precipitation. Maybe that is the first starting point which I have seen. But it has been existing, it is continuing. So one of this we will come back at a later time when we are discussing in our progress of our discussion. One of the most striking reality with respect to this natural resource, I'm using the word natural resource now very confidently because all of you have accepted that. One of the most striking reality with respect to this natural resource is what is given in the bullets there. We have only less than 3% of the water which is to be called as fresh water, 97% of which is contained in the seas, which is saline, which is not directly usable. Only less than 3% of this water is available as the fresh water, and out of which only 1% is available to us, because the 2% is tapped in the ice which is there in the mountains, which is also one form of water. That's why I specifically asked where is the starting point. In that case, we don't call ice as one of the components. It is because it is one of the forms of the precipitation. So it is tapped over there. It is not available to us. And within this less than 1% of the available fresh water, we are playing all these gimmicks of water management. And that makes us into a difficult as well as an honorable position that we are dealing with a resource which is the most scarce natural resource in the world. I mean, as engineers, we can take the credit that we are managing something which is the most scarce natural resource. So I made my point. I define water as one of the most scarce natural resources available on the globe, which we as engineers are forced to manage. And that is what is water. That's what is water, which we are trying to play all gimmicks with and try to manage. Fine. An extension of what is being said in the previous slide is what is being projected here. The water, which if at all we accept the characteristic names, which is the earliest available documentation is from the biblical court. if at all we adopt Adam and Eve was the ancestors from where everything has come down, maybe it's only a hypothetical thing. Now we come to an understanding that the water which they have touched is what is available to you also. The same water which existed throughout the centuries is what is being circulated even today. Nothing is recreated with respect to a natural cycle. So anything which changes its original characteristics with respect to the natural resource characteristics is going to continue to exist. And that's where the issue of sustainable development is going to hit us back. Because we said this is a form of development in which you can take care of your present day interests without hampering the capability of this particular natural resource in meeting the demands of the future generations. Your grandsons will also have the same right on this particular resource because this is not going to change. This is going to exist. And the way we change the natural characteristics of this resource is going to get a ramification onto the use of this particular resource in the future generations. And that's where the sustainable water resources management is coming to an important standpoint. Clear? I'm just summarizing what all you have said as part of the introduction. We have said that this is the essence of life. This has been the foundation of human survival, and we understand it even from the history, although we have not studied history as a subject after our 10th class. None of us as engineers, we have never studied it as a subject, but we all understand that all the civilizations which were the cradle of civil engineering has been developed on the banks of rivers. So that indirectly tells us civil engineering could exist only when water was existent, water was available for. This is what is our next issue. The sustainable and equitable use of water over the millennia has been ensured by cultural adaptation of water availability through water conservation technologies, agricultural systems, cropping patterns, and which is adapted to different climatic zones and conservation based water use patterns. We are coming to what we are expected to do as part of this discussion. The next issue is what I have been telling. We have been seeing the same water which has been existing to our forefathers. This is what is going to exist for our grandchildren, and that is what is said. As a consequence of the modifications in the water characteristics of the present day water use pattern is going to ultimately change the characteristics of this constituent as a basic, even as a basic constituent of H2O is going getting changed. So that is going to change the absolute characteristics of this natural resource and is to have ramification in its future availability as a natural resource. Fine. So this has also led to an exploitative or abusive pattern of water consumption, which we have landed up in. There we are already cleaving into the supportive capacity of the particular natural environment in which we are trying to have that particular developmental activity, precisely the engineering activity. All what was said in the first sustainable development definition was that there is no developmental activity which can be called as sustainable if it cleaves into the supportive capacity of the nature. It has to be within the supportive capacity of the nature. And if you remember, when we teach our students the groundwater pumping, there is something called the recuperation test which we teach them. What do we do in that? As a simple indication of what we expect as part of the engineering activity. What do we do there? we allow the well to get pumped, and we sit down and back calculate the time period which it takes in recuperating. Then we say that this is the optimum pumping capacity which is possible in this particular well, beyond which the pump is going to have a non-recuperable drawdown. That is not acceptable. So we will allow the system to get recuperated to the original water table level, and then say that fine, this is a balanced pumping rate which we can adopt. And that's all what is said in the last issue, that in an engineering practice, so in an engineering practice of use of water, we have very limited business in cleaving into the nature's supportive capacity in maintaining the balance of water availability to a particular geographical location. Fine. We will come back to these issues with a different slide. And with that, with the last pointer, the last bullet point which is said, the issue of engineering practice leading to abuse or over-exploitation of water resource is putting this particular resource under pressure. And when this natural resource is under pressure, it has already swayed to an unsustainable pattern of existence in the nature, and therefore all the engineering activities based on a skewed balance of water in the nature is going to be not practical. Is it fine? All that is what is the water pressure. We get into the challenges in natural water management. We look at this into two distinct challenges. One, the availability of enough water in its required quantity and quality to the entire population on the globe without any geographical bias. That's one of the major challenges. Some of us, we do have the advantage of having the natural rivers flowing down, which carry to some extent the fresh water, as we designate them, or we modify their quality perspective to some extent and try to use them. But even in the same country, some of the geographical areas land up in acute shortage of water, which leads to a quantity imbalance, which ultimately will be bringing in a quality imbalance too, and that makes it an unsustainable form of existence of the natural resources too. Fine. Okay. Then the second main issue which is being talked about is that this is also one of the resources which we design, we plan in when it is being supplied to the consumers as an engineering commodity. If that is the case, almost similar to what we do with respect to our building designs, it also should have the resilience to meet the natural or man-made disasters. Fine. Then we put in some introspective questions. Have we, as a global society in general and as an Indian society in particular, are able to meet this challenge or have met this challenge? The answer is an emphatic no. Even as a country, we are unable to meet this challenge. The second question is, can these challenges be met? Yes, the partial answer to that is that provided we are capable of getting into a sustainable water resource use, or a sustainable pattern in the water consumption pattern which we follow. Okay. Then are we on track to meet these challenges? We are divided on that answer. At times we come up with political changes that maybe we will be able to manage this entire show by interlinking the rivers. At times we say that no, that is going to be disastrous. At times we say that no, manage it locally at each local level and decide upon the equitable share of water. So the water equity has become a developmental issue, and we decide or plan our developmental activities based on that. So the answer is yes and no, essentially because we still do not have a clear-cut focus in achieving this kind of challenge which is in front of us as a global society or as a national community. So we get into the factors compounding this challenge. The first issue is water quantity. If yes, one of the factors is exponential increase of population. Fine. Although I am projecting this thing, I have my own personal deviation on this conceptual frame. But still, the number to be given water for is something which is going to boomerang in our planning activity, and that's what is increasing my challenge. The ever increasing exponential increase of the population is something which is creating an imbalance in my planning activity. Fine. And as we understand, mostly in water system planning, we do go into the planning with a future population forecasting. We say that the planning is going to be done for a design period of 20 or 30 years. Then we try to project the population. You must have also studied in your college days. We try to project the population to that, and then say that my per capita demand is to meet that particular population, and that's for which I am designing this system. And that's what is giving me a challenge with the first bullet, which is projected. The ever increasing exponential population rise is going to give me a challenge. That is not going to give me a straightforward design activity. We will appreciate this thing at a later slide also. There is an apparent increase in the urbanization pattern, and we have now come to in the regional planning, we have even coined a terminology called urban villages. We do have urbanized villages, and when the JNURM was to be as a project to be given to many of the towns in the country, there was a discussion. There are better townships or better rural areas than these towns to which you are giving the JNURM project. And that's a scenario with which we are living. So the increasing urbanization and trend in the migration of the population or the imbalance in the population is what is going to add to another challenge in addition to the exponential population growth which we are talking about. And all of us as job seekers have migrated to an urbanized area from our ancient village place, and between us we share the none of you is getting into that married class, no? So between us we share the feeling that none of our children would be interested in going back to my ancestral place even if I wish to. That is the end of the story. So if my children are not interested in going back to my ancestral village, then naturally I am also going to be bound here in an urbanized area. That's a small sway in the sociological pattern which is happening, and that's going to add another challenge to the so-called water appropriation activity, which as engineers we are intended to do. Okay. This is what is an added disadvantage with respect to urbanization. We have even coined a terminology called urban floods. Does anybody know what it is? We have coined a terminology. It is there is a guideline book available with the National Disaster Management Cell has produced a guideline also how to manage urban floods. What is a flood? In the literal meaning of it, flood, FLOOD, flood. Movement of excessive, where does it happen? That's what you are coming to urban flood. Otherwise, what is flood? Yamuna is on Spade, Ganga, the Ganges or the Brahmaputra is flowing above its the highest flood level, HFL, which we write there. We say that flood is something which is associated with a water flowing natural course. Floods have always been associated with a riverbank, and we always used to consider that as one. But now, what you said is what is leading to this particular issue, where there is excessive rainfall, what we have seen in Chennai this year, and what we had seen 2 years back in Mumbai. All that belongs to the category of urban flood, where we don't expect any flood, and we have not designed anything for meeting the flood control. And now we'll end up in a situation where we have deliberately or unknowingly changed the land use pattern and have changed the characteristic of the movement of water within the earth system, which was part of the hydrological cycle, based on which we have coined all these planning. We said that there is a defined natural cycle which has a characteristic movement which is expected to follow a cyclic pattern, which is not going to change with time. That's why I added the quizzical question. Otherwise, there is no cycle. If it has to change its characteristics, pattern, then I'm getting into a disturbed cycle. So that is what is that which is killing. The first issue, a massive land use change, converting the infiltrable land pattern into non-pervious land pattern, and thereby the restricting the water from penetrating down to the ground and creating a havoc to the extent of a flood, which we designate as an urban flood, which happens even in a so-called designed city like Chandigarh. It happened in Chennai, it happens in Bangalore, it happens in Mumbai, it happened in Delhi. Where are we going to lead towards is the basic issue which is projected, and this adds to a challenge in the water management, essentially because this leads to a change in the water hydrological cycle, based on which, on the basis of which we have created all these castles of water planning. Now the cycle by itself is getting disturbed, or the pattern of the cycle is intruded upon, by which the characteristics of the cycle is getting changed. Then all my planning based on the assumption that the cycle is going to be stable is going to fall flat. Am I clear? There, that is what is said. Fine. You understand from your environmental science understanding, lack of forestation or lack of loss of forest for whatever reasons, agricultural demand or urbanization demand. This is also leading to the local water cycle pattern changes. Well, with the urbanization, we do have we have a slide substantiating this bullet at a later time. Standard of living yields to the water use pattern. I think I don't need to make an eloquent speech on that thing. How many of you are from Chandigarh? Nobody. You must be staying in the on the campus. No? You know what is the per capita water demand of Chandigarh? Per capita water consumption of Chandigarh. Any understanding? You are all from civil engineering background, no? What is LPCD for, as per the water supply manual's provision? 135 liters per capita per day. Fine. We'll talk about this later. You know what is LPCD of Chandigarh, which you and I are part of?
I think
50, 550. You are slightly close to that. It's somewhere around 250 to 208 liters per capita per day. Are we not in India? We are also equally part of this national LPCD, which is decided for, and the equitable distribution of water in this country is decided that every citizen, including Prime Minister of India and the beggar on the road, is having a right to have 135 liters per capita per day. And sitting in a city which is called as the so-called elite city, I don't mind taking an introspective statement on that thing. We say that our standard of living is double the standard of an average citizen of this country. And that's all what is said over there. As the standard of living increases, the water consumption also increase, and the water demand subsequently will be increasing. That is what is said over there. The simple understanding which we make over there is that this is a variable. All what we said about the average water consumption pattern based on some kind of a calculation which we have made falls flat with this kind of a, an appreciation. I will have a geyser in my house. I will have only a shower. I don't use buckets. I don't have mugs in my bathrooms. I have only gadgets which can help me in flushing out water, and may not take it as an insanitary statement. I normally ask my students when we get into wastewater management, how much water we flush in a toilet? Almost. Now that you have 7.5 liter capacity low cisterns also. Originally, when we were children, it used to be 15 or 12 liter cisterns with a high head cistern, and no of the unparliamentary language over there. After a simple urination of 100 ml of urine, I try to flush this 15 liter flush tank. What am I doing? I am ensuring a cleanliness of 100 ml wastewater with 15 liters of water. How much multifold water for use for dilution? And that's what we use even in our the most modern which is designated as a conservation based urinals also, senses and discharges. Even if I pass by, it will immediately give a sensing that somebody is blocking the light when the rays, so it flushes it out. So the only point what he said is a standard of living is attached with the kind of gadgets which we are which is affordable to us with respect to carrying our life more and more comfortable or of a high standard, and we land up in a situation where we get into a larger water consumption pattern which had not been the original design value which we had considered our. And we'll end up in a situation of a completely misfitting, unsustainable water pattern thereafter. And if you have an understanding, when Chandigarh was actually designed, The original designer has designed Chandigarh only to meet its water requirement. You understand that there is no water body near Chandigarh. That's one of the major controversies which the during the planning stage of Chandigarh, which they had to face. The reason was no town can be developed without a water source. What the hell are you going to do? Here you are going to develop a town without a water source, without a water body, and you are going to create a hell. And the entire basic assumption with which they started was that the groundwater availability of this particular region is capable of meeting the demands of the 5 lakh population for which the city was designed. Now you understand that Chandigarh is also fighting with Panchkula and Mohali in getting their due share of water as part of the next phase of Bhagda water supply project. But otherwise, this was designed with the groundwater available in this particular region, and we have now landed up in a situation where we don't have water to meet our requirement. And we have also jumped into a pattern of an unsustainable water use pattern with our standard of living, the so-called standard of living. And that's what is clubbed over there. And once if water demand increases, we from civil engineering side understand that there is a vicious circle between water and energy. Water from most of the basic sources, whether it is groundwater or surface water or treated water or to be treated water, we add a substantial energy input to create water, and this energy is most of the time subsidized, and we don't add it to the cost of water. Therefore, I don't have to bear the cost of the energy which is consumed for pumping or transporting water, and I joyfully enjoy this water irrespective of my requirement. Okay. Well, of course, we did get into our standard of living, and adding to that, we did have several of the industrial activities cropped up, which had varying degrees of water demand added to the developmental paradigm, which had been thought over or might not have been thought over. And that's one of the reasons why in many of the modern developed urban areas, when a city is planned, we do define what is the type of industries which can be there in that particular region. This is largely to do with the requirement of water by these industrial units. Well, to make matter worse, there is a large level. You had a lecture on climate change in the morning today. Okay. Okay. We have a difficult scenario at this point of our history. We stand up with something which we cannot swallow, something which we cannot spit out, something called climate change, which has a global ramification. Some say it was based on our own past sins. We are paying for it. Fine, accept it. But had those sins not been there, we would not have been at this level of development. So we buy that. But that is also going to have a substantial pressure which is put onto water as a natural resource. It's going to increase the water demand. It's going to shift the pattern of the water cycle. Based on that assumption, we have made all these designs, which is going to shift the patterns, which is going to change the consumption pattern, which is going to change the availability pattern, so on and so forth, which is going to have a larger impact onto the hydrological cycle, and therefore it's going to change the water as a natural resource. Okay. That's what is talked about there. We do get into repeated activity of difficulty, which is going to make us into a more vulnerable situation with respect to water planning or sustainability in water use or water management. Okay. Uh, the quality issues are, so far what we have been talking about was the quantity issues. So now we get into another gross issue with respect to the two challenges which we have talked about. The one is the quality issue. When it comes to, we do understand that water never exists as H2O in nature. It has been existing in some form which was acceptable to us, which we used to relish as a natural resource and had been our consumption resource. But now, with our physical intervention or our industrial action or our water use pattern change, we change the characteristics of water as it is available in nature, or we are capable of intruding into the natural cycle of water and changing the original characteristics of water. And that adds to quality change in the water availability. Okay. Then our industrial activities changes our contribution to this particular natural resource. Almost all our wastewaters from industrial establishments add one form or other chemicals which had not been part of the original water as a natural resource. And if we are intruding into that, is going to exist in the water which is going to be available to the next generation. So that's one of the serious quality changes, and I've just listed some of our activities which practically change the characteristics of water which is available in nature as a natural resource. Other one which is said is large scale agricultural practices with fertilizers or pesticides application. Changes in the land use create a change in the quality of water which runs off. Increasing oil and natural production changes the quality of water. Increasing automobile activities or the exhaust pollution which comes out of the automobile exhaust, they all lead to a substantial precipitation of the pollutants onto the ground and ultimately finding its way into the natural available sources of water. Fine. Okay, that's what is said about the quality change as a challenge which is in front of water management. We did talk about this onto a larger discussion. This is projected as the first one goes with an internationally acclaimed statement which was made in the United States, that the next world war, if at all it is there, it is to be going to be on water. People are going to fight for water. It's not going to be oil. The last century has witnessed the oil-based wars. The next war is going to be based on water. Nobody is going to have water. I mean, if water scarcity is going to be an issue which is to be dealt by the population, then they are going to ought to fight between them to establish themselves in the availability of the fresh water. And although people are not talking about it loudly, the present century seen migrations also is not essentially because of the economic crisis alone. It is partially because of the lack of water availability, and though that is what is said. And with the climate change, the situation is becoming worse with respect to the possible risk which we are going to face in the changes in the water cycle and the quantity and quality of the water which is available for appropriation. Then the last question is asked, are we really at risk with respect to water? The obvious answer is yes, we are. The way we consume water the way we satisfy our demand, the way we extract the water is making it as an unsustainable use of the natural resource. The way we manipulate the quality of the natural characteristic of this resource is making it as an unsustainable natural resource, because it changes its characteristics. Once if it changes its characteristics, then it is not a part of the cyclic pattern which we have expected. So that's what is making us into a high risk society. So then we come to the solutions for this. How do we meet these challenges? The simple equation is with respect to a balance between availability of water. I take you back to the second slide which we had discussed. If you look at it from the paradigm of sustainable development, we find that the supportive capacity of the nature in giving you water is the only level up to which you can extract water in a system. And if it goes beyond that, that is going to become an unsustainable water pattern. Or that is what he said. The availability of water, the demand of water will have to be equated, and under the demand of water, we do have a large consideration in civil engineering with respect to loss of water or wastage of water, whatever be it. All these things put together on the right hand side of the equation will have to have a clear equation or clear equal symbol which is to go with the left hand side of the availability of water. And that is what is the sustainable use of water with respect to water management. And unless and until we are able to meet this equation in the water management, we will not be making any sense in water consumption or water supply or water extraction. All that is what is said in this thing. And what do? We need to evolve strategies or evolve or bring out decisions to meet this challenge. Fine, I just skip this. We do get into water as an issue with respect to these things in our drinking water supply. But the challenge which we face even as engineers over here is with respect to both the fronts. You are not safe with respect to quantity. Within the design period of a project, we find that the quantity has gone upside down. I assume that the perennial river which is flowing close by is going to give me X MLD of water. Within 5 days of the implementation of the project, I realize that X has become X minus Y. I'm gone. Everybody will now come back and say that you made a bad planning. Frankly, I did not do any mischief there. I did assume the average water flow of the river or the least flow condition of the river and said that this is my Q, and based on which I have developed the project. But this Q is not going to be a constant, and this is going to be a variable, is what we have been talking about with respect to the challenges which we face with respect to the quantity of water availability. And once if the quantity of water availability is varying, once if it is a variable, all our planning will go upside down. And now adding to that, we do have an understanding now that with our activities and the return of this water to these same water courses, they change its their characteristics. The water changes its characteristics, and it's no more the original water which was existing. So this cyclic form is largely getting disturbed, and therefore I'm left with no other option than to intervene into more severe engineering intervention with respect to treatment, with respect to a larger phase saving activity of a larger over exploitation of water, I will have to save my face in the society because everybody is pointing at me. So I say that, okay, fine. Then we get into double the rate of pumping. And the eventuality of that is going to come on to my son. When he comes, he will say that there is no water in the source which you have been tapping. That's what it is leading towards, and that is what is said as the issues which we are talking about. These are some of the questions which I leave it for your own introspection. Do we have enough water? I leave it with you. Will we have enough water at affordable cost in the near future? If at all, it's going to be more costly. Because now that a 1 liter bottle costs me 20 rupees, 15 to 20 rupees, a day is not very far. It is going to exactly jump into double. It is going to cost 50 rupees. And if I go elsewhere, I pay $1 for this 100 ml of water, packaged water, which is given, cost me $1. What is $1 for us? So most of the time we go without water also. It takes 66 rupees for me to get 100 ml of water elsewhere, and that is going to be applicable onto us also tomorrow, the way things are taking forward. Okay? So we leave it there. How does the climate change as an additional input, which you have been talking about, is going to change or going to multifold the challenges in water management? These are the two basic issues which I leave in front of you before we jump into the next issue. This is a counter argument which is being brought out. If I look at Chennai and go back to last year, October to December, do they have a shortage of water? Almost everybody was floating on water, and they have not been able to manage the water and properly use it. That's why they have been floating on water, saying that we didn't have safe fresh water. That's what is pointed out here. The availability of fresh water in different forms is there around. Tapping them at the right point, at the right location, without changing its characteristics is one of the possible intelligent moves which can be there in a fair water management approach. This would give us a fair advantage with respect to its quantity and quality issues which we have been talking about. There are countries in the world, for that matter, I was told, I had never visited that place. Israel is one of the classical examples of water management. It doesn't have many water sources available to its use. It's said to be one of the classical water management countries. They meet their demand, and they live with the same standard of living with which you and I live. Maybe there are few strategies which they have adopted are maybe sociologically unacceptable to us, or technically not compatible with our stage. They have a clear-cut metering system, and if you are consuming above what is intended for your use, you pay triple the cost. You pay and take water, and that way I will be able to make the equitable water supply which I have promised to my citizens in order. And anybody who is having a very high state of very high level of living standard, let him pay for it and take water and use it. And your irrigation practices will have to be absolutely scientific, and an unscientific irrigation practice is not going to be an acceptable pattern there. And if you are getting into that, you get the governmental support in getting your irrigation water. If not, none. You don't need to do anything. You will not be able to get water in that scenario. These are some of the statistical arbitrations which are being projected. The global abstraction is less than 99% of the available fresh water only. And in some of the geographical areas, it is even less than 6%. And therefore, most of the water related problems can be attributed as local problems than onto a larger global scale. It is always easy to throw it as a global issue and sit cool rather than fixing up a leaking tap in my bathroom. So that's what is being pointed out. Water, if you arbitrate onto the international statistics, we find that we are not unsafe with respect to that. The issue behind the entire problem is the only issue of management. That's all what is being pointed out. How much time I have? What time I should stop? 4. Okay. 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 Fine. Okay. This is what the last statement is. What is something which gives us a ray of hope. We are not abstracting 100% of the fresh water. We are with even less than 20% of the fresh water availability being extracted. It is available. And how do we manage the scene in bringing it as a balance is what is the issue. Well, we do have a third viewpoint which is brought in. We say that at a local level, if we consider as a planning region, we have the groundwater resources depleting. Punjab region is one such example. We do have a fast depletion of the groundwater resources. Then pollution of the water sources at an alarming rate. And the water infrastructure are all in a difficult scenario, even in this country. The lifestyle versus water demand is a paradoxical situation. This is what it is. The world as a whole, if you consider, will end up in a bankruptcy with respect to water as a commodity. I skip this. Is it fine if I skip? This is only a factual information which is projected. What is all said is the ecological damage is also obvious, and that is what is giving us a feel of a global crisis with respect to water. That's all what is talked about. We look at a possible ramification of this onto a global disaster. That's where we have the justification in saying that water is going to be a war-like, water is going to create a war-like situation. This is what it is. We all understand the water-borne diseases or water-related diseases, so on and so forth. We come up with an understanding that water is a potential danger if it is not a safe water which is given to. And any point of any drop of unsafe water which is being supplied or consumed is a potential disastrous situation. Okay? That's all what is talked about. It has a clear relationship which is established with the public health. Sorry. So this is only a global scenario which was only to substantiate the previous slide. And this is only to support the previous argument. We do have a local level water shortage which geographically acclaimed for. This is from the World Bank report on water shortage. This is what it is. We don't stand in the first few countries. So we do have a fair amount of advantage if we plan. This is only a global distribution. I leave it there for you to read. In case if you want anything to be talked over, I can take it up. Otherwise, we go ahead. Where she is looking at me. Then the LPCD pattern change. If you look at the water consumed for different activities, give us a fair clue where do we need to approach if we need to have a water conservation approach or a water management approach in our water use. And that's why I've projected this thing. And if you look at the 30 LPCD, what is written against the flushing of the toilets, the joke which I said is in position. All that is what we are doing. This is a small progressive curve which is plotted against the population growth and the water demand. Population growth is exponentially increasing with respect to the cities in the country, and vis-a-vis, if we look at a progressive time chart with respect to the availability of water, the water demand, and the utilizable water, we find an absolute imbalance. The demand at times, many a times, demand overshoots the availability. And there is a ray of hope with a green bar which is projected there. Utilizable water is much more than what we are calling all about that. That's what is being projected. This I skip. It's already shown by another graph. This is what is the annual withdrawal of water with respect to different beneficial use sectors, the industries or the municipalities and the agriculture. And you would be getting a better feel if one works on the wastage of water in each sector. You would be finding that more than 50% of the water which is extracted in each of these sectors are wasted. That is what is the paradoxical situation which we have knowingly or unknowingly tried to ignore. And this is what is a projection with respect to maybe 15 years from now. This is an Indian document. The Ministry of Water Resources have issued a planning document in which the sustainable water management is an underlying principle with respect to Indian situation. This is what is the paradigm which we have been talking about. We have to have a balance. We have to have an equation which is evolved between the demand and the supply. And that's what is requirement. But the equation which we have brought in this discussion was between the availability of water and the demand and the supply. That's all what is possible under the sustainable developmental. There are certain modern tools which can facilitate us in planning our activities onto a larger platform of GIS. That's how the Israel example goes like. They do have a GIS based platform which deals with all the management systems of water. Water vulnerability can be assessed and can be made available to the public. Dissemination of that information would at least to some extent help in managing the water with respect to quality changes. This is with respect to a possible conservation measure of water recharging or groundwater recharging with respect to the possible flooding which is being caused. That makes all the sense. And the possible locations for such zones which can be used as groundwater recharge zones can always be done scientifically and worked upon. This is what it is. This is a small paradox or a vicious circle which we have been evolving in our discussion. Energy is related to water, water is related to energy, and water is related to food, and food is related to water, and food is related to lifestyle, so on and so forth. So it becomes another vicious cycle which is being created, and that's how the basic paradigm is created. So one of the possible solutions, which is an obvious solution, is bringing in individual water use pattern changes, which is a conscious thing which is possible. There is no country which is required. There is no there is no administration of the country which is required to enforce that thing. There is no law which is required to enforce that thing. If I drink, I drink. If I use it for me as well as for future. All that is what is said in this thing. This is what is actually required for, and anything beyond that is an overuse or an abuse of water. All that is what is talked about. This is the virtual use of water with respect to food. I said food and water are related. The KFC water requirement is never charged from you. The water requirement for producing a Coca-Cola for 15 rupees is not charged from you. The energy which is going as an input is not charged from you. Assuming that water is free, the product is made. That is not a sustainable pricing strategy. If any commodity which goes in as a natural resource, which has its own value added into the product, so the product cost will have to invariably carry that price tag, with which otherwise it is not going to work. You know what is the cost of a glass of water which we drink after the treatment? It costs around 2 rupees. But all of us take it less than 2 paise. I pay only 30 rupees as water charge for 10 kiloliters which I draw from my tap. It is a highly subsidized product which is supplied by the engineering departments, because it is a life-saving commodity. But here is a time in which we will have to relook at our pricing strategy and decide what is the actual cost of this natural resource and attach this as a price tag against any of the commodities which we produce out of that. And that's what is written. No, it's a foreign data. Therefore, I use the word beef. No personal affinity to that product. What is being talked about is any process, the meat product has a water cost attached with that, and that has gone free in the consumption of that product. Even if you go to KFC, think that the what is it called, the chicken roasted thing which you take, it has a water cost attached with it. That is not paid by you. That's what is said. The only possible way in which we look at in the strategy is that if that is the case, let me start avoiding such things which are having a higher water tag, which is not priced for. That's all what is being talked about. Well, this is also known to all of us. All of us know that the electricity which we consume, we are not paying the production cost of that electricity. The taxpayers of this country pays for the larger developmental cost, or the debt which its finance minister owns in the budget is what we are enjoying over here. The production cost of the unit electricity is never paid by the consumers, and that's what is talked about. And water as an additional component in the energy production is never taken care of. It is a free commodity. None of the thermal power plants using water as their coolant is paying for that water. Anybody from Ropert? You go to Ropert side, we have a thermal power plant there. They draw water from the canal, discharge it back into the canal. Water is free, it has gone to my industrial process, and it goes back. And the damage which the industry has done to that water which it has drawn and discharged into my canal is not accommodated anywhere. And the electricity which is produced is not having the cost of that environmental damage which has happened into that quality of the water. So therefore, we say that it is a free commodity which is available for. And the energy which is consumed is not having that particular tag, which is, and it is a substantial cost which is involved. That's why this information is shared. And even the food products which we use, we understand with Punjab belt, we understand that irrigation is one of the basic inputs into agriculture, and without irrigation nothing happens. And then when gehu finally comes to the market, where is that water? It has gone to it as a basic natural resource, and it has turned out into a different product and come to us, but we don't pay for it. That's all what is being talked about. Punjab, the farmers get electricity as well as water free. Electricity is also free, so it is a double curse which we have added to. The water which is consumed for producing that energy is also given free. So it is a multiple abuse of water. This is what is talked about. I think you can. There has to be an integrated water management plan which is to be evolved, which takes care of all the issues associated with water in water consumption. Conservation is an effective component. Efficient use of water, a conservative use of water is what is something which is required. Recycle and reuse forms as a basic requirement in water management, which is not largely being practiced. And then additional sources of water is a possibility. There are freshwater sources as well as not so freshwater sources available for, with a larger investment, with a larger cost factor. Those sources can also be tapped. So for example, Singapore takes care of its water from the entire reuse of the wastewater. It takes care of its freshwater requirement from its desalination plant. From the sea, it draws its water, desalinate that water, use it as a fresh water. And now, desalination is a very costly process. Now they have come to the stage that you collect your wastewater, take it to the treatment plant, treat it as a fresh water, bring it out as a fresh water, and supply it as new water. They call it NEW water. And we had visited that plant when we visited Singapore. What is the entry point is foul smelling. The exit point, you carry a bottle of water. They present you a bottle of water as a new water. It is absolutely made from with the wastewater which you have flushed out of your toilet and comes back to you as a drinking water in your bottle. And that's what is a possibility which one has to explore if there is a crunch in the resource availability. This is what is talked about in the earlier slide. It involves certain amount of conservation practices. It involves certain amount of efficiency, water efficiency decision making. It involves an amount of recycle and reuse possibility with respect to water. And even Chandigarh as a city has also practiced the reuse of treated wastewater, the tertiary treated wastewater as irrigation water. Irrigation, you are not supposed to use the drinking water, treated drinking water as irrigation water. Fine, these are all possibilities into a larger integrated water management system. That's what it is. This is a fair integrated water management system which involves a national goal, which involves a pricing policy, which involves a conscious effort towards management of water as a natural resource. So this is what is for this site. Maybe the young brigades. It requires an innovative and a revolutionary approach in water management. It's not going to be solved with the yester approaches which we used to have. This requires a diverse and a multi-institutional partnership, because pricing is not always an engineer's job. The policy making is not always an engineer's job. He is nowhere taken care of in that. But it requires political wisdom also. It involves a participation from the implementation side. Then we have also seen that it has a vicious circle which is evolved with energy and all other sectors, including food. Concerted, integrated approach in managing the scene is required. A distributed system is much better than a concentrated urban development, which can take care of itself with respect to the supportive capacity of the natural environment against which the planning region is developed, and the assimilative capacity of the nature of that particular planning region. Thank you very much.